Greetings. This is the 26th episode of the Mabuku Chronicles. And greetings. It's been a long time since I last did one of these. The 25th one took place in August of 2014. So it's been over 4 years now. And thank you to everybody who has subscribed in the meantime. And well, the reason I haven't done anything in the last 4 years is because I don't think that anything that I have said in the previous 25 episodes still holds true. And during the first one, no, the second one actually, I quoted Rudolf Steiner, and this was a quote that was put in by Prokofiev in his book, The Spiritual Origins of Eastern Europe and the Future Mysteries of the Holy Grail. And the quote is, and I want to repeat it so that everybody understands what's at stake. The ultimate aim of those entities opposing humanity's spiritual evolution is to direct our present civilization into a condition of mechanico-chemical stasis. Humanity is to be directed at all costs and with ruthless malice to remain at our current state of development, whereby the individual has no possibility of independence or freedom. And it's a very good idea to keep that quote in mind in our day-to-day life if we really want to understand what is going on today. Now, the first thing to talk about is the Great Financial Reset. All right, the Great Financial Reset in essentials is that the world financial fiscal situation is gotten very, very, very problematical, to say the least. Mainly the overwhelming debt load of the world. And this debt can never be paid. And so what is happening, and you won't find, what I'm telling you, you're not going to find in the mainstream media, because their job really is to keep everybody distracted with dead ends and red herrings and non sequiturs. And so if people are using the mainstream media as their source of information, they're being seriously misled and distracted from what's really going on. And none of this, what I'm going to be telling you, is going to be reported until after the fact, if that is the case anyway. Now, what's happening behind the scenes is that Putin and the Russian Prime Minister or President, and the President of China, Xi, and the President of the United States of America, Trump, all working together to bring about the Great Financial Reset, which is underway. And the fundamental purpose of the Great Financial Reset is to restore the gold standard, and there's a three-step strategy that has been employed The first one of which is to get all the trading platforms using gold as the how should we say, the medium of trade. Then the next step the gold will go into the banking system, and the third and final step is gold will be currency worldwide. Now, that's essentially now the point is that we need to be prepared as to what is going to happen in terms of our own particular financial situation. And it's everything that I've said in the past episodes still holds true, is that now the timing, that's another matter. I mean, it may happen as early as this coming November, or it might not take place till next year. It might not take place till 2020 rather. So that's really, the point is to be prepared and to be aware that this is going on, so that you are prepared. Because the preparations are, a summary of what I've said in the past episodes, are the making sure you have at least a month's of food supply on hand, in your, at home. That you have all your money out of the banking system except what you need to have to conduct your monthly expenses, and you have plenty of water on hand, and you make sure you're stacking gold and silver depending on your net worth. And you keep doing that. And I remember, I've already said this, that the gold and silver stacking is not for purposes of investment, it's for purposes of insurance, financial insurance. Because when the day actually comes, it will probably come like a thief in the night, so to speak. And, we'll wake up and, the grocery stores will be unable to get supplies because the supply chain will be disrupted, and for how long, who knows. The banking system will be in bank holiday, and who knows for how long. You also need to have a plan B where somebody, either friend or family, who lives away from urban areas, because it's going to be a great deal of civil unrest when people can't buy any food to eat. And make sure you have toilet paper. That's a good idea too. And especially those people that that you can go to at a moment's notice to leave, whatever big urban population you happen to be living in, and they have the food and all the things that I've talked about, because it is going to happen. And the it's going to be it's really not easy to predict exactly how people are going to respond, what the government is going to do, and you can see that all this stuff is I'm talking about is definitely in preparation because of these what's it called, national emergency alerts being talked about, and so forth and so on. And so it's like be prepared, Boy Scouts. So now the thing is that there's a important spiritual, shall we say, impulses that are taking place right now. We are, to remind you, in the fifth post-Atlantean culture, also known as the Anglo-Germanic. You know, we've had the ancient Indian, then the Persian, then the Greco-Roman, and then the Indian, Persian, Hebrew, the Egyptian Hebrew, then the Greco-Roman, and now the fifth one, the Anglo-Germanic. And the key thing here is that these impulses on coming from the spiritual world, because nothing that happens in the physical world can really be understood without having the spiritual knowledge and understanding of what's happening in the spiritual world as impulses coming into the physical life on earth. And these are always happening, and we need to understand what's happening presently. Now, this what I'm looking at here is I don't know whether you can read that. Right. Wow, you can't read that. Can you read that? The time sequence and spiritual foundation of threefolding. Now, these were two lectures given by Rudolf Steiner in March of 1919 in Dornach, Switzerland. And what's interesting about this is that it didn't come to light until late 1990s, and they were published in English for the first time in 1998. Now, in the introduction that is given here by this man, Nihilini Slater, in September of 1998, I want to read a passage that he wrote in the introduction. Chaos and turmoil, terrorism, greed, collapsing economies and governments, need and fear over so much of the earth cry out for the direction these lectures' wisdom and mighty pitches can give. Now, that was written in 1998, and since the intervening 20 years, everything has actually gotten a lot worse. All the things he says, the collapsing economies, collapsing governments. Fundamentally, we really don't have any governments in the world today in the real sense of being governments. All they are is henchmen for the bankers, and are populated by, you know, zealots, racketeers, thieves, and knaves for the most part. And so, you know, and I have quoted this in the past, where Steiner said that if the threefold social organism, or what I prefer to call it, the threefold commonwealth, is not implemented, one day politics will see to it that the economy is destroyed. And the other quote was that the nation state would smash itself to pieces. And that's what we're seeing today. And notwithstanding the fact that nationalism and ethnocentrism is rampant, nevertheless the governments are complete shambles, and I'm talking about at the federal and state level, and as well as, governments worldwide. So the threefold social organism is very, very important, because in this time it needs to be implemented. And the time sequence that Steiner revealed here in these two lectures in 1990, which is almost 100 years ago, are very important to get to understand and have the knowledge of them, because this applies to every human being on earth. Every human being is subjected, or is a subject of and influenced by the spiritual impulses coming from the spiritual world, the hierarchies, the seraphim, cherubim, thrones, Kyriades, dynamis, exousiae, and the archangels and angels. Now, the point is that he does say, Steiner, that the threefold commonwealth is going to come about. I mean, obviously it is, because it's directed, the impulses are coming from the spiritual world, so it is going to come about. I mean, there's no question about that. The only question is whether it's going to come about through catastrophe and calamity, or whether we, get our act together and with the knowledge that I'm going to be giving you, actually implement it consciously and direct it with, presence of mind, and to know what needs to be done. Because this is not a plan, it's not a blueprint, it's not a utopian ideal, and none of those things. These are spiritual impulses coming from the spiritual world, and we need to be understanding what these spiritual impulses are, and where they're coming from, and what they entail. That's the important point. Not, we need to bring about what was, the whole French Revolution was about, equality, fraternity, and liberty. So these are threefold, and the liberty, equality, and fraternity refer to the threefold social organism, the threefold commonwealth. And that was a long time ago, the French Revolution. So these impulses are there. I mean, they're evident, but they are very much opposed by those the entities who are on this earth, and they're also in the spiritual world, opposing the proper spiritual development of humanity and the earth, and to prevent the accomplishment of the mission of the earth and humanity. And they will, Hitler was quoted by another anthroposophical author, Peter Trudowski, in his book The Antichrist, where Hitler was quoted saying, "We want to have nothing to do with this threefold commonwealth." And so there are many opposing forces, and most of these opposing forces are people. Well, the main ones are the secret brotherhoods, and I haven't talked about them yet, but I will at some point in the future. And they do oppose the threefold, and so any attempt to bring this about and implement it is going to be met with opposition, and this has to be understood. And, because you have to know what we're up against in this term. Now, the key point about the timeline is that we're in, as I said, the fifth post-Atlantean culture. It began in 1413 and it will end in 3753 AD. This is, as I mentioned, the Anglo-Germanic culture. And its purpose, it's also called the Age of Consciousness Soul, and its purpose is to number one, confront evil, that is the opposing powers, both the spiritual powers as well as the human, shall we say, human actors on the earth at this time. And the other thing that really needs to be, the problem today is that because we had to go through this period of spiritual darkness, which began in 1413 AD and ended around 1899 with the end of the age of Kali Yuga. That period from 1413 to 1899 was a period of spiritual darkness where humanity just had the least interest, in fact had no interest at all in the spiritual world and anything to do with the spiritual world. And of course that is also true today, but it should have ended in 1799 when the Age of Light began. And we tend to be, human beings tend to be a little tardy, a little kind of indolent, spiritually speaking, and get way behind the times. And so, for the most part, what this period from 1413 to 1899 meant was that everybody became an automaton, a thinking automaton. And this is so evident today. People are just doing everything by rote. They just come up with the same stuff all the time. I mean, this whole political thing that's going on, you look at that and you think I'm thinking to myself, why are people even bothering with the political system? It's totally broken. It's a complete shambles. And it's nothing but a bunch of populated with individuals who have no interest in the well-being of the American people. They're only interested in lining their own pockets, and they're racketeers and thieves and scoundrels. So why would you even bother to do it? Now, why you bother? Now, I hate to tell you, American people, but you've been indoctrinated. You've been programmed from the time you came into grade school. So everybody sort of thinks that who the hell is in the Supreme Court, or who is president, or which party's in power makes any difference at all to your day-to-day running around. It absolutely does not, unless, of course, you let it. Those people have nothing to do with how you conduct your daily lives in terms of your spiritual and emotional and speechifying and thinking. It has nothing to do with that. But then, no, that's not what people do. They rant and they rave and they mule and they pule about this and that. I mean, it's just endless garbage and wishy-washy, blah, blah, woof, woof. That's all you hear all day long. I'm on the internet, Facebook. It's incredible to me that people are so entrenched in the sludge of the political system, and politics and the government and all these people, all these things are just breaking down. They're just a shambles. None of these people are in power in the bureaucracies anywhere. They couldn't govern their way out of a paper bag. So why are you so entrenched in following what the hell, you know? You should just quit following the mass media. Quit doing that. Find the source of information which are there on the internet, where you can get real solid information about what's going on. You know, I mean, there's a lot of garbage on the internet. Obviously, you have to weed your way through a lot of chaff to get to the real wheat of the situation. But you can do it. You can spend your time to sift through all these websites and blogs and whatnot to find out who is really, you know. And I've given you, and you know, you have to go back in the earlier episodes to find it, but I gave you a whole bunch of, you know, about half a dozen that I'd weeded out and found, yeah, these people, they know what they're talking about. They are honest. They don't know anything about the threefold social organism. They don't know anything about macrobiotic eating and the real serious importance of eating macrobiotically. They don't know anything about that, or facial diagnosis, but they do know about what they do know, and they're honest about it. And you know, and they're no bones about it that the financial, fiscal, economic situation is a complete shambles also. So so this threefold commonwealth needs to come into view. I mean, it needs to be put in, you know, stuff. We need to work on it consciously, and I'll give some suggestions of how to do that. So in the fifth yeah, it's amazing to me, all these people that write anthroposophical literature, they still are not able to make the distinction between epochs and cultures. Because the epochs, we're in the fifth post-Atlantean epoch too. I mean, we had the Polarian, we had the Hyperborean, we had the Lemurian, Atlantean, and we're in the post-Atlantean, the fifth, and there's 6 and 7 epochs to come. Each of those epochs have 7 cultures, and we're in the fifth post-Atlantean culture. All right, the next one, which will begin in 3753 AD. And remember, our lives are eternal. It's not like when we die, that's it. That's not it at all. We are eternally, we have eternal life. We've been through many incarnations in the past. We're going to go through many incarnations in the future. And we need to prepare for our next, I mean, you know, I'm going to be 71. Yeah, right, my next birthday. So I'm definitely studying all that Steiner has to describe about what happens between death and rebirth. But we come back into our next incarnation. And one of the things we need to be doing when you get to the age I am, you know, once you get past 64, the next thing you need to start working on is your next incarnation and life between death and rebirth. Because we have to do a lot of work here to make preparations for our time between death and rebirth and our next incarnation. And so it's like when I'm making these dates and I'm saying, okay, it starts 3753 AD, you know, you may say, well, I'm not going to be here. Well, you are. You are going to be here. But you know, the fact that you may not believe that is really nothing to do with it. You know, spiritual facts are spiritual facts. And karma and reincarnation and life between death and rebirth are spiritual facts. And the fact is that you and me, we've all been through all those incarnations since the time of at least even in Atlantis, for crying out loud, and before Lemuria and so forth. We just don't remember, that's all. And that's one of the things that if we do work on our spiritual development, when we get to our next incarnation, we will remember our past incarnations. Think about that. You know, I mean, people today are so stuck in the mud. I mean, with this automaton thinking and their second-hand, hand-me-down thoughts that they get from their parents and their schooling and the media and the government and you know, wherever. I mean, it's all automaton thinking. We need to learn how to think, right? I mean, he says here, it is mankind's special task in this fifth post-Atlantean culture to develop imagination. Now, imagination is a state of consciousness. The folk genius cultivates the imagination from which must come the common spiritual culture of the future. Imaginations will be required by human beings, for only through them will the anti-social impulses so rampant today. And you can say that in spades, because he said these things in 100 years ago. And you can, I mean, that's in spades. Anti-social are in spades today. Should develop into social impulses. Thus, through imaginations, human beings will acquire the faculty to put themselves in the place of other human beings, in the place of their fellow men and women. You cannot put yourself in the place of your fellows mainly through abstract thinking. Abstract thinking makes you stubborn. Abstract thinking causes you to be attentive only to your own opinions. And do you see that? Above all, abstract thinking generally leads us to close ourselves off more or less from this mobility, that is, thinking mobility, that is needed for us to live with the spiritual world. In other words, to consciously, I mean, we're always living with the spiritual world, but to consciously, that is to have spiritual thoughts, spiritual feelings, and spiritual experiences. This is what we need to do. Okay, so in order to, now I have all those, because I've been studying Steiner since 1982. So I know of what he speaks is true. And these imaginations, so what is needed in order to lift ourselves out of this dead thinking, automaton thinking that goes on? You know, you look at, okay, we have the midterm. Now, this is just a great example. We have the midterms coming up. And the midterms, you know, so you have all this stuff going, people vote this, vote that, your vote counts, all these really terrible, horrible, you know, commercials, you know, on TV, you know, because I watch TV, I watch sport. I love to watch sport. I don't have the sound on, but of course you get commercials between, you know, plays and whatnot. So you see all this stuff, and then as if it ever mattered, it just doesn't matter. It's just everybody, so that everybody's just stuck in this automaton, you know, it's just going through the motion. Oh yeah, we got to do this, we got to put the pamphlets out, we got to put the ballots out, we got to set it all up, you know, because it's just done by rote, you know, going through the motions, you know, without looking at what has it made any damn difference to the state of the world, who's in power. You know, I started following consciously politics when I came to the States in '79, you know, when Reagan came to power. So I thought, well, you know, we'll see what this is all about. And Reagan was campaigning, and he was saying, well, I'm going to balance the budget. I thought, oh yeah, we'll see, right? So I actually watched his inaugural speech, and he just flat out lied to the American people. Well, that was the last inaugural speech I listened to. I said, what the hell? Here's the President of the United States lying to the American people. I mean, come on. So we all know politicians are liars. We all know these people are only in it for their bank accounts. They're not interested in doing anything other than lining their own beds. That's it. You know? And nothing to do. They wouldn't know the meaning of the word to govern let alone govern. So, I mean, it's just incredible. And this is what I call automaton thinking, just this dead end, we just go through the motions, you know? And that's what's happening. And yeah, and that's in every field, everywhere. You see it in the medical system. Medical system has no knowledge of the human being at all. None. It's just in all the annals of all the disciplines in medical science, the human being is simply not present. You know, so here we have, you know, people with what's it called in the NFL, crucial catch. Then you have, you know, this pink ribbon, and then you have all these people pouring their money into a black hole, and nobody in the scientific community wants to stand up and say, we don't know what the hell we're doing, because the track record is there. Okay, what is it? Nixon, 1971, the two things that completely was just dreadful for the United States, or should we say the useless states today. One is he signed the National Cancer Act, which became known as the War on Cancer. You think that the medical system has won the war on cancer? You know, we're talking 71. How many years is that? 29, 39, 47, almost 50 years of literally billions and trillions of dollars, man hours, researchers all over the world, and we have zilch to show for it in terms of dealing with cancer, because they don't understand the human being, because they have no knowledge of the. How can you have an understanding of the human being if you have no knowledge of it? Huh? It's not possible. But nobody in the... See, I studied as a scientist. I went into the veterinary field, and my personal experience told me that we don't have a clue. That's why I got out of it. You know? But all these scientists, all they're doing is just being paid gigantic amounts of money by guess who? Pharmaceutical companies to do their research. I mean, talk about a conflict of interest right there. You know, and it just goes on and on. So there's the automaton thinking again. You know? Totally amazing. And so the thing is, all right, so so this imagination. Now the thing is about getting our way out of abstract thinking, this mechanical automaton thinking, is we have to start thinking in pictures. That's the important thing. And then we will develop social impulses. And one of the social impulses that we will develop is that it will become totally anathema to you if you have imaginations, you think in imaginations, and you have spiritual thoughts and spiritual feelings and spiritual experiences. You will just say public education is an abomination on the face of the earth. And it's literally painful to see all this public education going on, because it produces automaton thinkers. That's what it does. So you do the work now, which means you study spiritual science. This is what we need to do. You know, because that's the modern spirituality. There's nothing to say. You know, the religions are all, how should we say, they've done their job. You know, all of them. They're great religions. They had great avatars, and there's nothing to. We're not denigrating. We have reverence for all the great initiates of those religions. But they're all dead in the water now, because their time is past. That's why, you know. And there's no more opponents of spiritual development, more, shall we say, tragic than the churches. They're all opponents of spiritual development. They're also, you know, stuck in that automaton thinking that I'm talking about. Now the main hierarchy that is behind is that it is at this time the angels are going to become much more intimate with regard to their relationship to each individual human being. You know, because we all have a guardian angel, and this guardian angel is assigned to us for the course of our life, and they're becoming more intimate, and this is where this impulse is. Now, the first of the three, liberty, equality, fraternity. Liberty refers to the cultural sphere, the cultural life. The cultural life means education, spiritual life, and the arts, fundamentally. So they should become free and independent from the government and the economic sphere. They should function. That's the cultural sphere should function independently. Should have its own administration. So this is what the first thing we need to do at this point in time, starting from 1900 and on until 3753 AD. So that by the end of the fifth post-Atlantean culture, a free and independent cultural sphere with its own administration is operating independently of the governmental sphere and the economic sphere. That's the most important. That's the first step. However, now, the sixth post-Atlantean culture goes from 3753 AD until 5013 AD. And it's thus known as the Slavic culture. It is under the influence of the archangels. They will become much more intimate in terms of their influence. And there we need to develop a state of consciousness which is called inspiration. And that's where we start to make a governmental sphere that has nothing to do with the economic sphere and nothing to do with the cultural sphere. In other words, government has nothing to say about what happens in education or the spiritual life, and it has nothing to do with the business and economic sphere. That has to be done and completed by 5013 AD. Then the seventh culture, which is the last culture of the fifth post-Atlantean epoch, is known as the American. I've seen it called the American as well as the Scandinavian culture, and it goes from 5013 AD to 7773 AD, and this is where the Archai, in terms of their relative position in the hierarchies, the angels are the ninth, the archangels are the eighth, and the Archai are the seventh. And then we have three above them and three above them, which are all higher levels of consciousness. And it is the economic sphere which is going to become under the influence of the spiritual influences of the Archai, and that has to be completed. Now, but all the influences of the of course the Archai and archangels and angels are all influencing us in various ways and doing various tasks with regard to the progressive spiritual development of the world and the earth and man, humanity. These influences of from the Archai with regard to the economic sphere, the archangels with regard to the governmental sphere, they're playing in. It's not like it's this is a step-by-step procedure. First we do this, then we do that, then we do the other. We do them all at the same time, but we work primarily on making sure we have a free and spiritual cultural life, free and independent spiritual and education set up, so that we have no public education at all, and the churches have nothing to do with telling people what kind of spiritual life they should have. It should be chosen by each individual what kind of spiritual path they follow. That's free and independent. They choose that because we all belong to various spiritual, shall we say, paths. Whether they come from the Far East or the Central or the West. Everybody has to choose, but the point is, everybody chooses that out of their own free will. They're not dictated to, is what it is. So, and the Catholic Church, for instance, its days are numbered. Maybe it has another 300 years and it's over and done with. And the Catholic Church probably knows that. So, and what is the other one? Protestants, same thing. We have to develop ourselves and form our own, if we so wish, our own, places of worship and spiritual retreats and whatnot. And of course we need to set up independent educational facilities where the teacher and the parents are the ones that decide what kind of curriculum they want, and this is all administered by it has its own administration, and people who are working in the sphere of the arts and the spiritual life and the educational life will just have to have conferences about sharing information and ideas and concepts about how to go about doing education. And of course that's already started. It's not like that's something that hasn't already started. The Waldorf school system is a free and independent, well, it should be, because they don't want to, they are ones that are being, shall we say, sponsored by the government, which is tragic. It's tragic. It's got to be free and independent of any governmental influences, and that has to be maintained as a real important necessity in having a Waldorf school or any other kind of school. The government has nothing to say with it. Nothing to do with it. It doesn't have any connection whatsoever. However, now the threefold Commonwealth is based on the human being. The Constitution, one of the aspects of the Constitution of the human being, which is that we have a head, we have a thorax, and we have a digestive metabolic limb system. It is the head of the social organism, which is the cultural sphere. The thorax is the governmental sphere, that is the rhythm of the heart and the lungs and the circulation of the blood. That is represented, so to speak, in the social organism, in the governmental sphere. And it's the economic sphere that is the representative, or the expression, shall we say, of the digestive metabolic limb system. Now, in the human organism, when it is healthy, all those three function independently of one another, but they mutually support each other. So in terms of where the cultural sphere is going to get its support, that is financial support, is from the economic sphere. Through grants and stipends and gifts and whatnot given by the economic sphere. There's a great deal of detail that has to be worked out with regard to what the actual day-to-day organizational framework has to be put into place for the economic sphere to support the cultural sphere, and to how to pay for the government sphere. Because one of the implications of having the threefold order, the threefold Commonwealth, implemented is that there will be no central government, there will be no political parties, and so forth. So now it's getting toward the end. It looks like how come my battery's running out? It says I only got 8 minutes left. Well, that's enough to do. Now, I'm going to be putting up these things more frequently, these episodes of the Mabuku Chronicles. But I want to finish this one with saying, okay, now, obviously, all the governmental bodies today, you know, the legislature, the administration, and the judiciary, they have no interest in the threefold social organism at all. The Democratic Party, nor the Republican, nor the, Independent, they have no clue. So the thing is that political party then, my suggestion is the political party has to be set up a new one, which its task will be to bring about the realization of the threefold commonwealth. And this, the fundamental, shall we say, MO of this political party is that once its task is accomplished, it will be dissolved. Now, this task may take many thousands of years, and nevertheless, it would be, I think, a good idea if the young people today who know that the government is sick, as a diseased organism, a social carcinoma, like many things, many entities are today in the public realm, are social carcinomas. They need to set up a political party whose platform is we are going to implement the threefold commonwealth and all it entails. And so that means that the young people, I'm coming to 71 next month, you know, and I'm not young enough or whatever. I'm an advisor, counselor, teacher, you know, but it needs the young folks, the people in their 30s and 20s who know that the system is sick, and they need to start a political party, and they can call this political party the threefold party. And they need to start working on getting this party off the ground, getting the votes, getting into power, becoming president, etc., etc., and just changing the whole thing according to the indications given by Rudolf Steiner, which means you need to study the books that have to do with the threefold commonwealth, threefold social order. One's called Towards Social Renewal. They are in some of the episodes going back. I actually showed you copies of them, you know, because I'm studying them, and so forth. And I'm hoping, this was done on Columbus Day, beautiful sunny day here in Carson City, Nevada. Beautiful skies, chilly. I love the fall, you know. I love the changing of the colors and the cold, brisk air and the bright, sunny blue skies that we have here. So it's Columbus Day. It is October the 8th in the year of our Lord 2018. And I'll finish there, and hopefully I can put this up in the next few days. You know, because I haven't done this in a long time, and I can't remember how I actually did it. And of course, my desktop is a complete wreck. I need to get a new one, but I don't have the money to do it. So hopefully I'll be able to do it with my laptop. Anyway, thank you very much for listening. Thanks to all the new subscribers. And wherever you happen to be, have a good night, good day, good morning, good evening. And thank you very much.